Hello and welcome to the Athlete Profile Show on Wisp Sports Radio. I'm Chris Stafford, and at Wisp Sports we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage.
Don't try to hide your face now. I see right through.
The Athlete Profile Show takes a closer look at women who have made sport their career and the story behind their success.
Stories I've heard before.
As an Indigenous person, I have a very deep connection to my culture and to my land and to my community, which is similar to a lot of people that join roller derby, because when you join roller derby, you also become family with women and non-binary folk.
Trust me, darling. Don't waste a golden egg. You peel me, cut me open. What are you looking for instead? Trust me, darling. Don't crack this golden egg. You sweet talk through me. Just listen for once instead.
My guest today is Mick Swagger, a former member of the USA roller derby team and the founder of Team Indigenous. Mick is originally from the Dine Indigenous community in North America, and the idea for a team of Indigenous women came about through social media, and it's resulted in a team that took part in the Roller Derby World Cup earlier this year. When Mick put out a call for women to apply for the team, she got a great response, and more than 60 women came forward, of which 20 were selected, and the team now comprises women from different nations in the US, Canada, South America, New Zealand and beyond. And they come from a range of different professional backgrounds. From a heavy metal worker to astronaut and lawyer, the women have come from far and wide. And Team Indigenous is unique in its heritage and culture, and has a community that reaches far beyond sport, making the women unique role models among a marginalised people. It's also given the women an opportunity to be among their own, to learn of their families and their other nations. And they also have another mission, to raise awareness of the treatment of Indigenous communities. The Indigenous women who were murdered or disappeared along the Highway of Tears from 1969 to 2011. Their fundraising contributes to Missing and Murdered Women USA, a charity based in the US. The women are also making a statement by coming together as a sports team and building a community across their nations, which is giving a voice to the wider issues of Indigenous people. Mick explains why this is important, and also we'll learn how inclusive the team is with their approach to the players' roles. Mick, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Tell us why you're in Bordeaux.
Well, I coach roller derby around the world, and at this moment, I happen to be coaching with my wife in Europe.
Well, that's beautiful. So the perfect lifestyle then for you.
It's been pretty wonderful, and I've been doing it for about 4 years now, so I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
What was your other life before this?
I was a social worker and teacher at a Native American family center based in Portland, Oregon, called the NAF Family Center. And I joined roller derby at the time that I was working there because I need, some work-life balance, and I needed sport in my life again. And roller derby kind of took my life over. I kind of gave myself to it for the last 10 years.
Well, you certainly made something of it. We want to tell the story, of course, of the team that you now have, Indigenous Flat Track Roller Derby team, and of course you were at the championships there in Manchester recently. So we're going to talk all about that a little bit later on in the program. But your story is unique, Mick, because it's not just, as we know, when you join a team of any sport, you seem to have an automatically extended family. It becomes a camaraderie. It's much more than the sport itself, and you build a community around it, and of course it has a history. But yours is so much more than that. It's really a heritage. It's an extended community, of course, and it's political. It's almost become a movement in and of itself. So let's talk a little bit about the roots of this and your origins, because that's really the basis for this team, isn't it?
For Team Indigenous, yeah, for sure. I am Diné, Omaha, and Pawnee, and I grew up on the Diné Nation, which is in the southwest desert of Turtle Island, otherwise known as the United States. Um, and I, as an Indigenous person, have a very deep connection to my culture and to my land and to my community, which is similar to a lot of people that join roller derby, because when you join roller derby, you also become family with women and non-binary folk who you practice with, 3 to 4 times a week or more if you're on a very competitive team. And because you're spending all this time together and putting all this energy into sports together, you become a family. And so it felt very natural to me, because it's very similar to how Indigenous people live in the world.
Seems to be an extension of that, and I'm curious as to the kind of sports you had growing up. Then, went back home when you were a child. What sports were you exposed to then, Mick?
Oh, for sure. So, on growing up, I ran. There's a very big running culture. That's a traditional thing. It's uh, running morning, every morning, a form of prayer. Where I'm, and our Indigenous cultures also use running as a form of communication. And so you run to the next village or to the next, several villages away to relay information. So running has always been a big part of my life when I was growing up. Um, Softball, basketball, volleyball. I mean, I played every sport that I could, and I started skating when I was about 6. There's not a lot of concrete where I grew up. It's mostly dirt roads and desert, but I got a pair of roller skates for my 6th birthday and just loved it. So anytime I could find a patch of concrete, usually a parking lot of a school, that kind of thing, would just roll around. And I used to roller skate to school when I was in high school, and every Saturday be at the rink, and just anywhere I could, I was constantly roller skating. But that wasn't a sport, and it wasn't anything that became important in my life until I was about 28.
And then what happened? What was it that connected you to the life you now have?
I was working at a Native American nonprofit based out of Portland, Oregon, and we received a number of tickets to watch roller derby out of the Rose Rollers. And my manager was like, Mick, you have no life. You need to have some fun. Here are a couple of tickets. Go watch roller derby tonight. And okay, hint taken. So I watched a bout and immediately was drawn. It's so much fun to watch. Atmosphere was really exciting and electric. Rose Rollers have a big fan base. I think at the time there was like 4,000 fans watching a light show, a big drum group coming in the beginning and kind of intros the singers, and leaders all come out, and then it was just 2 fierce games for the next 3.5 hours, and I just was completely captured. I loved it. I thought, this is my sport. I could absolutely play this sport. I know how to roller skate. I like to play contact sport. I didn't have a lot of experience playing contact sport growing. Girls weren't allowed to play football, but I liked playing with my brother. So I just thought, I want to play, and I did. I signed up. I tried out. I made the training, which is fresh meat, and they teach you how to play roller derby. They teach you the rules. They teach you how to hit appropriately, and how to be safe, how to fall safely, and you just kind of get taken in by this group of amazing women.
It is a very, very physical sport, isn't it? Does it help to have a certain, size and stature in the game, or do you find women of all sizes and shapes? Because I'm pretty lightweight, I can imagine I could pretty much be knocked about all over the place.
Yeah, it's every body type can play roller derby, and that's really wonderful about it. And that's one of the initial questions that people always ask, like, I'm really tall, can I play this sport? I'm really small, or I'm really big, or, I identify as that. And so for me, when I joined, I was, I'm a really big body. Am I going to be able to excel in this? And absolutely did. And you can at every size, because roller skating is roller skating. Once you learn how to skate, we can teach you how to use your body for the size that you are and to your benefit. It's a lot of leverage, and smaller people can underneath bigger bodies, and bigger bodies can hold a little bit more ground when you're roller skating. So it's just all kinds of bodies play roller derby, which is really amazing about it. And I think why it attracts so many people to try it out.
Now, one of the other characteristics of the sport, then, Mick, is the names. You all have to have a unique game name, really, isn't it? And you've got Mick Swagger, of course, after your nickname of Mick, but your real name is, of course, Melissa Wagoner. And then some of the others I just think are lovely. The Fighting Mongoose, Squarrier, Bashful, Black Rock Bruiser, Windigo, and on they go. And we hear some wonderful names. Why do you have to have a nickname for roller derby? Tell us that.
Well, when roller derby first started, it was really, I think, a little bit more fun. The rules were a little bit looser. It was more theatrical, and I think that people liked having kind of like an alter ego when they played roller derby. And as the sport has evolved, we've kept some of the fun theatrical parts as it's become much more athletic and serious. So we still have that element of roller derby, which is really great. So you have a derby name, which is what we call it. And after you train with your league and learn the sport, you get to choose your derby name. And that's a lot of fun, helping people find one or coming up with your own. And then you skate under that name. And some people choose not to. At the World Cup, some people skated under their family names. But I still skate under Mick Swagger. I've been skating under Mick Swagger for 10 years. And Mick has been my name since I was born. So yeah, it just kind of works.
It's like having a showbiz name, I guess. And
Yeah.
I love that you have come from with the team Indigenous we're going to talk about now. You've got a group of women there from all kinds of backgrounds, Mick. Astronomers, lawyers, postal workers, heavy machine operators. It's a whole range. I mean, people have come from all walks of life to this sport.
Yep.
It's really quite interesting because you hear the makeup of different teams for different sports, and they can be very varied. But the unique thing, of course, about your group of women here is the indigenous nature of it. You're all from indigenous nations as well. So tell us a little bit about the foundation of the team and why you felt it was important to establish a team of just women from indigenous nations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I skated with Team USA in the previous World Cup in 2014. And, at that point in my derby career, I was on the top team in the world on Gotham Girls Roller Derby. And we had won the Hydra a couple of times. They had won, I joined them after their kind of winning streak. And the next step, my next bit of athletic goals was to pursue winning a World Cup with the nation team. And I tried out for Team USA and made that team. I was so honored, and I learned so much. And, I got to play with the top 20 athletes in the States, which was a wonderful experience. And I went to the World Cup, and I spent so much time watching all of the other teams play against each other mostly from South America, and Europe. There was a team from South Africa, there was a team from Australia, there was a team from Aotearoa, and I just loved it. It really struck something in me. I talk about a lot in my life is that I am from an Indigenous nation, and it's always been a part of me, and I've always served my community and worked within my community. And when I went to the World Cup, I really wanted to represent that part of my heritage, but it wasn't the most appropriate place to do so. You know, I was discouraged from bringing my nation's flag, which is the Diné Nation. And it wasn't, you know, like they weren't trying to shame me, but it was more like, let's all be, you know, red, white, and blue. And I just don't have connection to that, you know, to be honest. I've never had connection to the flag. I've never been a patriotic, quote unquote, person. I've never stood for the national anthem. I've always been very disconnected to what that feeling is. And so when I went to the World Cup, I just thought, oh, I just want to be here with people that are from my nation, and how amazing would it be to have other Indigenous women by my side as we played at the world stage together at a World Cup. And, you know, I expressed that with a couple of friends, that desire. And after the World Cup is actually when I started traveling more internationally with roller derby, and had a lot of amazing opportunity to coach around the world. And as I coached around the world, I met other Indigenous women and non-binary folk from other countries. And we talked about it, and we're like, wouldn't it be so great to have a team Indigenous? Oh yeah, that's, you know, what an interesting idea. And we kept talking, and over the years I kept getting emails and you know, I have a coaching page, and people would message my coaching page and tell me their stories about being the only Indigenous person on their team. And that feels really isolating. And it makes them feel, you know, so much pride when they see me play at this national level and this international level, that they kind of look to me as someone that, you know, they look up to. And I just thought, we're peers. We can come together and do that, you know, and play together. And they don't have to, you know, think I'm the only one. And I think, you know, just with all of these stories and all of these conversations I had, I just knew that the next World Cup I wanted to come with a team Indigenous. So we did. I gathered some friends. We created a mission statement, and we put the call out to the Indigenous community. We had 60 people try out. They submitted video, so we had to watch a lot of footage. We had interviews with folks. We had lots of Skype calls and conversations. And in the end, we chose 20 people to represent the Indigenous nations of the world. We're global. We're not located in any one country, because it was really important for us to convey the idea that Indigenous people, we don't assert borders with our neighbors. We share and exchange and grow together. And so we really wanted to model that on the team. We wanted to model that idea of, you know, traditional values are that we are borderless nations, and we are also led by Indigenous leadership. So there is no one person that is in charge of the team. We're all in charge of the team, and we all make decisions together. It's not left to one person. So it's very different, and it's very special for us. And to be able to be accepted into our community, you know, the roller derby community, we're like, absolutely, Team Indigenous sounds amazing. We will be happy to have you. What can we do to help you make this happen? And we just said, you know, we want to compete. So we did.
Well, I was going to ask you about, you know, the national governing body of the sport, the Women's Flat Track Derby Association. That is the recognised governing body of the sport, isn't it? How do you become a recognised team for that then? What does it require, Mick?
Well, for the Women's Flat Track Derby Association, it's actually a separate organization than going to the World Cup.
Right.
So the Women's Flat Track Derby Association is made up of teams all over the world, and the national teams are separate. But in order to become part of WFDA, you have a team and you apply, and then they give you a set of requirements. So you have to, you know, watch a lot of training videos, and you set up your own nonprofit, and they really teach you how to run a business, and you have a lot of resources at your disposal, because the WFTDA is 16 years old, and there are hundreds of leagues around the world. So everybody's on a forum together, learning about how to run a business and how to coach sports and how to, create a board and all of these different amazing life skills and skills that you can use within your work life. So I think going through the steps of all of those is pretty big, but that's kind of the idea is, you're learning how to run a business together.
Right, exactly. Well, you've got, as I said earlier, women from all kinds of backgrounds here coming together, and to them, to all of you, the the actual culture, the heritage that you're bringing with you is just as important. Give us a sense of the kind of culture that is now created and why you feel that this is almost a political movement in a way. It's a statement that you're making by having a team that is of Indigenous nations.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like many sports that require a lot of money to start playing them, the access and opportunity to play roller derby is pretty limited for people of color and for remote communities. Thus, the WFTDA and most of the people that play roller derby are white people. And, when you are an Indigenous person in the world, you're already in a very small minority. And you're used to being in a small minority, and now you're playing sports as a minority, and it becomes this part of your life that you're like, how do we create space for more Indigenous people to join this sport when the startup costs are so high, and when you don't see a lot of people reflected back at you, you don't see yourself reflected back within your community. So one of the things of bringing Team Indigenous together was because all of us had some experiences of, microaggressions and racism and, ableism and homophobia. And there's all these kinds of things that happen in the world, but they were also happening as a minority when they happen to you. You don't have a lot of people to talk to about it if you're the only minority on your team, if you're the only Indigenous person on your team. So coming together as we started to meet on Skype, because we didn't actually physically get to meet in person until we were, a few days before the World Cup. As we came together, there was a lot of healing that was happening. We were talking about our experiences, and a lot of times, just talking about your experience and having someone that understands it without having to ask questions or second guessing you or gaslighting you, you just feel free. It becomes this place of understanding, and you can lift each other up through that. And this is how I dealt with that experience. And this is how I've, helped dispel some microaggressions that are happening in my league. And this is the language that I've introduced to my team. And so all of those things, we're really like helping each other navigate, navigate life. We all give so much of our time and our, emotional and mental energy to this sport, that to have other people that understood you and helped you navigate it in a way that felt really positive and felt like there were solutions to problems, really helped. And something that we talked about a lot was this Indigenous philosophy of nation, community, clan, self. So when you are creating something in the world, you don't start at, what you want as an individual. You think about outside of, you're the last kind of thing that you think about, I guess. So you would think about your nation. How is this going to benefit my nation? How will this benefit my community? How will this benefit my clan? Because when you can think about those things that are higher, a bigger, than us as an individual, they're going to benefit you. And so as we're creating this team and talking about it, we're like, there's a lot of healing going on here. So how can we also benefit our nation, our communities, our clans? And one of those things that we wanted to do was to make sure that people knew about this epidemic that was happening, that is happening in the U.S. and Canada, which is the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And many of us live in the areas where Indigenous women go missing all the time, where Indigenous women are found murdered all the time. And these crimes are not investigated by our governments. These crimes are not even quantified by our governments. They don't put them in a set of data to study. These are things that our governments don't care about that's happening. And it's a direct result of the extraction industry. And we know this because we live there and we live it and we grew up with it, and it's scary. And we really thought, if we can come together as Indigenous people, and all the support that we're getting is so wonderful, but we need to focus that at something that's happening in our community. So every bit of money that gets donated to us, all of the merch that we sell, when we have a lot of plans to take it further and we're able to raise money, we donate a portion of that to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women USA, is who we're partnered with at the moment. And these different organizations support families that are going through the process of looking for their missing family members, that need to pay for funeral costs, just the things that come along with trying to find somebody that is missing or has been found murdered. And so we're just really trying to highlight that epidemic and support it in any way that we can while playing the sport of roller derby.
This is a wonderful opportunity for you. Obviously, it's providing a vehicle for change. And we know that sport's an extension of society anyway, and I think it's wonderful that you're able to embrace this, and you have that sense of, cohesion between yourselves, a sense of identity and belonging that you wouldn't have elsewhere, and also to combat the marginalization that you clearly are subjected to, and the vulnerability, as you explained just there. I mean, that was a case in point. The marginalization of Indigenous nations as well. But I'm curious also because there's several components to this then, Mick, which I think are really enlightening and really are a wonderful opportunity for you guys, and within sport, using that sport as a vehicle for change. And with your identity, of course, you probably as a group, you're learning the language of other nations. I don't know, is that something that you get an opportunity? Do you talk in your own native tongue? And give us a sense of how that feels and the opportunity it gives you to embrace the other nations and their languages and the differences, if there are, between countries, of course, too.
Yeah, for sure. It's been really amazing. When we first met, we all introduced ourselves in our various traditional ways that you would do so. And if we spoke the language, we used our language. And if we didn't use our language and we didn't know our language, that was okay. We introduced ourselves in talking about where we were from, where our families were from, what our heritage is, and how we're connected to community. We do have we have people from all over the world. So it was really amazing to hear the variety of language and tribes. I think we represent, I think it's 28 different tribes. I'm 3 different tribes myself. There's a couple of people that are, 2, and then lots of different people that come from one tribe. So we represent a lot of different nations, and we have been also teaching each other about those. But there's a lot of commonality that we don't have to teach each other. We all smudge, and which is to burn sage and to, that was described in the New York Times article, where you put it over your body, over your head, and over your heart, and you pray together. And that was something that we did at the World Cup, and other Indigenous players from other teams actually came and joined us a few times. So we had, a few members of Team Mexico saw and were like, "Ooh, we want to smudge with you." And So we really brought that sense of who we are as Indigenous people to the World Cup, not just for ourselves, but for the other Indigenous players and other World Cup teams. And that was really special. But yeah, there's a lot of learning, which is exciting because, you know, all of the things that we're exposed to all the time are Western history and Western culture and, you know, European culture and all of these different things, and science and pop culture and all, you know, it's all mostly non-Indigenous information that's constantly pumped at us 24/7. And so it was just so wonderful to learn about each other's heritage and where we're from. We also did a Skype meeting where we just kind of introduced each other to where we were from and what the land looks like and why it's special. And we shared pictures with each other. So there was a lot of cultural learning that went on as well.
Yes, this is a wonderful opportunity. I can see why you're all embracing the opportunity in itself. And I think we can also learn from Indigenous people too, because you know that you have obviously these traditions, and you have a language, and you have what I read there and I wasn't aware of it until I read it in the New York Times. You have what you call a two-spirited person, an umbrella term that refers to Native American people who don't fit in the traditional gender binaries of male or female. Talk a little bit about that, because that in today's society is the language that we are adapting. We are learning to use that language in the wider world.
Right. Yeah. Two-spirit is a modern word. It's kind of a pan-Indian term, or I guess we would call it like a pan-Indigenous term, where essentially most of our tribes lived outside the gender binary. My tribe, in fact, has 5 genders, and some tribes have 7. So there's a huge spectrum. Gender is on a spectrum. And as an Indigenous person from Turtle Island, the term two-spirit has really been something that's been reclaimed and talked about, because we are colonized. The sacredness of our, gender diversity has been taken away from us through, Christianity. And so we're a lot of us folks, myself included, are reclaiming that part of our heritage, and we're decolonizing ourselves and really talking about, traditionally two-spirit people are sacred, and traditionally two-spirit people are healers and nation builders and people that help each other help community mediate situations. And so really taking back that term and reminding ourselves and our people and our nation, our community, our clans, our families, that two-spirit people are here and are important in our societies.
Can you just unpack that a little bit more for us, Mick, when you said that, in some nations there are 5 or even 7 genders? Relate that to what we understand in the wider world. What does that mean?
I suppose some of those terms that Western culture is talking about now might be like trans male, trans female, cisgendered male, cisgendered female, non-binary person, and intersex person. So those would probably be what people might know as terms that are Western.
In the Western vocabulary. Yeah. I guessed as much, but I wanted to hear it in your words where you're coming from. And of course, This is probably, being amongst yourselves in this environment, is probably an opportunity to learn a little bit more about your own heritage too. Have you learned anything more by being with women and having these conversations?
Oh, absolutely. I think definitely learning more about other tribes and other nations, the way that they view the world is really affirming. I know a lot about my culture because I grew up in my homeland, which is really fortunate, and not everybody did, and not everybody did on our team. Some people grew up outside of their homelands, which, when you disconnect, when an Indigenous person is disconnected from our geography, it's really hard to connect to our stories because they are from our land. And, walking on my land, I understand the stories because I can see the rock formation that's within the story. So there's a lot that's connected to where you grew up. And fortunately, I grew up on my lands. And I think it's been really wonderful to be able to relay that information to other Diné women that didn't grow up on our lands. One of our members, Jumpy McGee, she grew up in Maine. And so we've been able to connect even more because, I know how to introduce myself traditionally. She's learning how to introduce herself traditionally. So that sharing of information feels really wonderful because it means that I am helping teach somebody, but then also you gain a deeper sense of who you are by sharing that information with someone from where you're from. Yeah, so it does feel really wonderful, and I've definitely learned more about myself and about where I come from by sharing.
I'm just digressing here, Mick, because as a horsewoman,
Okay.
I'm curious. Did you grow up riding horses?
I did. I got my first horse when I was about 9 months. There's
Yes,
a
I
picture
thought
of
you
me
must
on
have.
it.
Wonderful. You probably always rode bareback.
Oh no, not me.
Oh no.
Absolutely not. I'm no, my no.
Okay, so you're a horsewoman as well.
Oh yeah, I love horses. I love animals
All
very
right.
much, an animal lover.
Good for you. Okay, well, we're going to move on now to talk quickly about the World Cup because you took your
Sure.
team there, Team Indigenous there. You got. I'll say this very fast. You did get beaten by Italy, Denmark, and the Netherlands. But, these
Yeah.
are mighty teams. It was your first appearance at a World Cup as a team. Were you intimidated, or did you bring the wealth of experience you had, obviously, playing with Team USA in a World Cup before? Did that kind of, give you the confidence and give the rest of the team confidence, like, yeah, we can do this? Did you have that kind of attitude that, we're as good as any of these and we can do it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know who we were going to play until, about a month before. So we didn't really have any idea about where we might fall within a spectrum of 38 teams, especially because most of us had never met. And our first practice was 2 days before the World Cup, and then we had another practice the day before the World Cup, and we were the inaugural game. So we had a practice, for 2 days, and we were the very first game of the tournament, which means as a coach, because I also coached at the World Cup for Team Aotearoa, I wasn't able to scout any of the teams, which I usually do. I have a lot of information about, these are the players to look out for. This is the strategy that they use. This is what we might expect. And, for us, we knew that going in that we were learning to play with each other. So we weren't stressed about winning. We were there for the experience. We were there for representation. We were there to meet each other and to share our message. So the sport aspect of it was, for me, it was low on the priority list. But we gained so much knowledge, and there's a lot of women that were from remote communities, so they've never even had this kind of experience. So for them to come to the World Cup and to learn and to grow within, our 4 days was incredible for them. And I could see people really learning as they were going through the games and lighting up and getting excited. And there were people that were playing different positions. Like normally, blocking position is safe because there's four of you and it feels like, okay, I can do this. But as a jammer, you're kind of by yourself and you're responsible for the points. And, to be honest, when Jumpy and I watched the videos and built the team, we didn't even think about positions. We chose people based on, athletic ability and also their amazing stories. I just thought, this person hits like a a truck, and she's so incredible. And her story just like brought tears to my eyes. And this person looks like really fast. And, she has an incredible story as well. So we kind of just built the team and then thought, I don't think we have enough jammers and point scorers. And because I have experience, I was like, well, I can do that if needed. I don't have a problem. I really enjoy jamming, but I'm known as a blocker. So we didn't go into the games too stressed about it. We just kind of built what our positions were at our practices. And then halfway through the tournament, people were like, actually, I want to try jamming, or I want to try blocking. And so in our last game versus Denmark, it was actually, we were leading in the first half. And at halftime, I think there was maybe like 10 points difference or something. It was like maybe less than that. It was a really tight game up until halftime. And that was the game where all rules went out the window. I stepped down and didn't play. I bench coached, and I just said, all right, who wants to block and who wants to jam? And that's how we went out every 2 minutes. It was just whoever wanted to do that position, played that position. And there was something about that, I think, that shifted for us, because people played better than they had the whole weekend. And I think it was that they felt empowered. They were having fun. There was no pressure. And we were winning, which was amazing. And it felt really good. And I think that as an individual, I've been coaching for long enough to know like when I'm needed and when I'm not as a player. And I knew that I wasn't needed in that game. And I knew that I could contribute the best on the bench and giving encouragement and positive feedback off the track. And it was such a good time. I was really proud of the team. Really proud.
And of course, it sounds like it. You instilled confidence in them and empowered them, so altogether successful, regardless of the match results themselves. And of course, there's that cultural immersion as well. Being in Manchester, in the north of England, unlike anything else in Europe, and no doubt it was the food as well that you were taken with, right?
Yeah. Well, we kind of had some jokes over the weekend because, we didn't get to play any other Indigenous teams. We were like, we're playing all of our colonizers. Like Italy was our first game, and Denmark and Netherlands, but it was such a good time. And I know a lot of skaters from all of those teams. I coached several people from Team Denmark 3 months previous. I've coached a couple people from Amsterdam, and they were part of the Netherlands team. And I coached a few people from Team Italy 3 months previous. So, when you get out there and play, you just feel like you have this sense of sisterhood on your team, but then also against your opponents, because you all care about this sport and it's fun. And, they all practiced every month for the last year. And so they were pretty serious about it. But afterwards it was just, lots of tears and hugs and excitement.
And your influence is spread far and wide. And we should mention, as you stated earlier, about Team Aotearoa. Aotearoa, is it? Aotearoa. Aotearoa, got it right. Okay, Team Aotearoa roller derby, which is the national team of New Zealand. How did you get that job? And how much commitment do you have in terms of time? Because you're also coaching elsewhere, as we know. You're currently in Europe. How does that fit into everything else?
Yeah, I've been living in Melbourne, Australia for the past 2.5, 3 years. And I've been to Aotearoa several times to coach roller derby, just on small trips. I went once in 2012 for a month and traveled and coached, and another time in 2015 to coach for about 6 weeks. And I met a lot of people there and stayed in touch. And when they were forming their team, their executive committee reached out to me because I was, in Melbourne, and asked if I would coach their national team. And, it took a lot of consideration. I wasn't quite sure, like, how is this going to work? Auckland is only a 3-hour flight from Melbourne. So as far as time, once a month flying to Aotearoa, staying for a weekend or a week. If I usually coached around the dates that I was around the time that I was coaching the national team. I would then go to either hold a big boot camp for the local community or travel a little bit for the week and coach local teams to make it work for myself, for work purposes, and then also to coach the national team. So yeah, I made it work, and I went to Aotearoa every month for about 8 months, and yeah, had a great time. I love that team. They were amazing. Team Aotearoa placed 10th at the World Cup.
And now you're in Europe coaching, so you're coaching as a freelancer. You're traveling the world, literally.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Okay, pretty nice lifestyle. And of course, Melbourne is an awful long way from the Grand Canyon. Why did you decide to settle there?
Well, I went there for work in 2015 and loved it. I made a really great group of friends, and that's where I met my wife. So, met her and decided to go back and maybe see if it was a budding relationship. Let's see if this can go somewhere. And it did. So I ended up staying for 2.5 years.
Well, there we are. Yeah. And where we are today then now, we're going back to Team Indigenous. How is that funded? Are you able to make any money at all? You mentioned that you're selling merchandise, of course, but give us a sense of, if people can get involved with this, if there's anyone listening that's interested in this, how do they participate, follow you, and all the rest of it there, Mick?
Yeah, so you can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Team Indigenous Roller Derby, the same for Insta and the same for Twitter. Like our page, read our articles. If you are an Indigenous person that is interested in roller derby or plays roller derby, please message us and join us. We are going to be expanding the team to every continent. Our dream is to have, a Team Indigenous team on every continent and then come together and play against each other. And then maybe send the top 20 of those 7 teams to the next World Cup. So we have some big plans coming up. You can also donate to us via PayPal at teamindigenousrollerderby@gmail.com. You can buy our merch. We have some really great T-shirts with logos, and those will be on sale for the next month. And but we don't make money. We end up donating any proceeds that we make to Missing and Murdered Indigenous USA. So we're self-funded athletes, and yeah, that's about it. That's us in a nutshell.
Great. All right. Well, we'll put links in the show notes accompanying this episode, Mick, so people can find you easily. And I have a final question. Well, that as we talked about the culture of roller derby, it seems, and not just, of course, the Indigenous team, but generally speaking, there is that culture. There's the name that you have to have. Very often women are tattooed and proudly carry tattoos. I'm wondering if your team has its own unique tattoo yet.
Actually, we do. One of our members of Team Indigenous, she is from Aotearoa. Her cousin is a master carver of greenstone. And he designed he carved and drew a design for us that is the embodiment of an eagle and a fish hook. And with that, her derby name is Fucking Tough, and that is Chrissy Ryburn Phillips, and she has that tattooed on her already, and several of the team members have been talking about getting that as well. So we do have our own special tattoo.
Wonderful. All right, well, we're going to follow what you do. I hope you'll stay in touch, Mick, because this is a wonderful story, and really is very important what you're doing and how you're giving back to your community as well. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to work on my own derby name. Maybe you can help me with that.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come on the program. It's been great to talk to you, and the very best of luck with the team and, of course, with your coaching and the rest of your roller derby career.
Thanks so much.
And you can find a link to Team Indigenous social media on our website with the show notes that accompany this episode. Just go to wispsports.com and look for Athlete Profile under the Listen tab. And whilst you're on the website, do take a look around at all the other wonderful coverage we have here on women's sports as the world's largest podcast network for women's sports, as well as the articles, blogs and videos. You can also join in the conversation by emailing us at info@wispsports.com, as well as on our social media channels. Just look for Wisp Sports. And if you have a moment when you're next on iTunes, do leave us a 5-star review. It does make a great deal of difference to our rankings there, because you can find us on any podcast player. We really do appreciate you listening, because we know you have many choices when it comes to podcasts these days. And there are so many amazing stories of women in sport. So thank you for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere.
Just me,